this is Troy. Welcome to another edition of Hunkered Vegans. We are still here in our closed bar, SawTown Tavern, and we're still cooking. So I've been experimenting with recipes, and today is very much an experiment. I've played with this once before. We're going to make Hungarian stuffed peppers. My grandmother, especially as she got older, made less stuffed cabbage and more stuffed peppers because they were just a lot easier. And I love cooked peppers, so I was happy. The difference between a Hungarian stuffed pepper and the Italian or Mexican inspired versions that there are a ton of recipes out there for is that the ingredients go in raw. So if you're using ground beef or a mixture of ground beef and pork, the rice is raw, the meat is raw, the onions are browned, and then it's seasoned up with a couple of eggs. So we're going to use flax eggs, and I make my flax eggs with aquafaba, which is the chickpea water I told you to save earlier, and I use that as the liquid. The ratio is about 2.5 tablespoons of liquid to a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, and then you let that sit. You know, I usually give it 10 or 15 minutes. The flaxseed will swell up. It's a great binder. So we definitely want the binding that the 2 eggs would give us for this application. So when my grandmother made Hungarian stuffed peppers, she would stuff a bunch of peppers, and then she would do an equal amount of meatballs. And essentially they're a porcupine meatball, if you're familiar with that. And they would cook in the sauce, so they would hold together and cook in the sauce, and then you had your stuff, you either just your stuffing in the meatball, or you had the stuffed pepper. So we're gonna go for that consistency. I'm gonna say this, if you're watching this, it means this recipe turned out really well and it was delicious. If it's not delicious, we're not gonna show this particular video. But let's get in the kitchen. Let's talk about the substitutes we're using for the meat, and we're gonna see how this all comes together. Let's go. Okay, the one element we're gonna cook in our filling is gonna be the onion. So I've chopped one good size, medium to large, yellow onion. And we're just gonna throw it in the pan and get it going. And we want to add a little color to our onion, so we want to go a little beyond translucent. And this is the only thing we're going to pre-cook, is the chopped onion. We're going to let that start cooking while we work on the other elements of our filling. Before we put the filling together, I'm using 6 bell peppers because that's what I've got. And I'm taking the tops off of these, and I'm going to put them aside because I've got another recipe I'm going to chop them into. You just want to remove the pith and all the seeds and get a nice pepper that you can stuff. So we're going to do 6, and there they are. I'm using a roasting pan. My grandmother always did her stuffed peppers on top of the stove, which is a pain in the ass. I'm going to do them in the oven. We're going to cover this dish. So this is actually one of the roasting pans she made a whole lot of food in. And this will allow us to submerge these in the sauce to allow the liquid to get inside and help cook the ingredients. So we've got 6 bell peppers, and they're ready to stuff. Then we're going to start our filling. I've got a mix of white and cremini mushrooms that we're going to pulse. I washed about 18 ounces of mushrooms. I don't know if we're going to use quite that many. We'll see. So let's put it in the food processor, and we're going to pulse. We want to leave some texture. This is going to work out well. So the base of this filling is going to be white rice. This is just plain, uncooked, long grain white rice. And I'm using red lentils because the cooking time is about the same as our protein. So I've got 1.5 cups of each going in there. So I'm going to start measuring out our mushrooms just so I can maybe get an equal portion of mushrooms going. So let's just see what I did. Got 1/2 cup. Full cup. Now, I love the combination of lentils and mushrooms as a meat substitute. We're going to add a little bit of seasoning that we wouldn't normally, but we're going to keep this as traditional as possible. And this is just about right. So we're going to wind up with about 1.5 cups of mushrooms. These are we're not cooking them first. We're gonna let them release their juices into the filling as they cook, because we're gonna need some liquid to cook up that rice and those lentils. Along with the sauce, these are gonna cook in. Okay, we've got some nice color on the onions, so we're gonna take these off the heat and let them cool a little bit so that we can add them to our filling. So as I mentioned, aquafaba is the liquid we save when we drain chickpeas, and I've mixed about 2.5 tablespoons to 1 tablespoon of ground flax meal, and I made 2 eggs. So we've got about 5 tablespoons of aquafaba to 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed. And I've let that sit, and it gels up nicely. And mixing the two instead of just water is going to give us an even better binder, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that's going to bind this up nice. Flaxseed adds omega-3s, it adds fiber, it adds a lot of good nutrition, but it's really going to do what the eggs would have done for this recipe. And now we're going to season up our filling. So we're going to start with salt, good amount, ground pepper. Don't skimp on the pepper. Now, my grandmother always used paprika in her filling as well as in her sauce, so we're going to do that as well. I'm going to add some smoked paprika. Now, what I'm going to do is about a teaspoon of smoked. This is going to give us a little bit of a meaty flavor. Normally, when you're using ground beef, I would use all paprika. So since I would normally do a tablespoon, I'm going to do 2 teaspoons or so of regular sweet paprika and a teaspoon of smoked. Salt, pepper, that. I'm going to add garlic and some garlic powder. I'm going to dust this with a bit of granulated onion as well, even though we're also using the fried onion. We're seasoning up those lentils. We're seasoning up the rice. This is the minced garlic. I'm going to do about 1/2 tablespoon of that right into the filling. And then we're going to take our fried onions right here, and we're going to toss those in as well. And as I said, that's 1 yellow onion chopped up and browned. That's it. That's our filling. Now let's check it. That's actually not it. I'm going to add an element that I don't normally, so give me 1 moment as we stir this up. And again, we want to be able to sort of form a meatball out of it if that's possible. Here's where we're going. I'm going to add 2 more ingredients to this and then keep mixing it. The first ingredient I'm going to add is about a tablespoon or so of tomato paste. And I'm going to add about a tablespoon of liquid aminos. And again, liquid aminos, we've talked about before, it's an all-purpose replacement for soy sauce. I love the flavor it adds. It gives a nice meaty flavor, less sodium than soy sauce would. We're going to mix this up. Okay. Taking our filling. This is a nice consistency. It really is just about the consistency I would have if I had used ground beef or ground pork, or the combination of the two, as my grandmother often did. So I'm just filling them to the top, not packing it tight, making sure they've got a nice good fill on them. There we go. So these can be cooked with just tomato sauce if you're so inclined. I like to season up my sauce a little bit, as Nanny did. I'm going to take 2 large cans, I think they're 29 ounces a piece, of just tomato sauce. We're going to take the rest of our tomato paste that we did not use. So that's just the rest of I think this is a 6-ounce can, small can of tomato paste. All right, to the 2 cans of tomato sauce and the rest of the can of tomato paste, I'm going to add a full can of water, and as Nanny taught me, I rinsed out the can with the water. Now this should be enough to cover those peppers. If it's not, I'll just add a little more water, which is fine. Now I'm going to season up the sauce a little bit too. I'm going to take about 2 tablespoons of paprika. Yeah, 1.5 tablespoons, let's say. And that's just regular sweet paprika. Ground pepper. I'm just going to do a little garlic powder. Stir that together. This is going to be the sauce. I don't want any lumps of paprika. We could have used a whisk, but then we'd have to wash the whisk, and that turns into a whole other thing. So this is good. All right. I'm going to cover our peppers. That is about perfect. A little bit of our tomato paste didn't quite mix in, but as this bubbles and cooks, it will, so don't worry about it. And I'm gonna do rinse this with about another cup of water, just because I want a little more immersion than I'm getting. There we go. Just so the peppers are nicely covered. And then we're going to cover this with foil. And we are going to put it in the oven at 350. And we're not even going to check it for the first 90 minutes. And then we'll see where we are. And there we go. We're going to let it do its thing. Okay, our peppers are not completely soft yet, but you can see that the filling is puffing up nicely. So our rice and our lentil is cooking. Our sauce has cooked down a little bit. So I'm going to put it back in the oven. Get the crunch out of our peppers. I'm going to give this another 30 minutes. These have now been in the oven for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and they look fantastic. Look like they've held together really well. And there goes our timer. So the peppers are now nice and soft and done. The sauce is thickened up nicely. And now we're going to do a taste. So one of the things I was looking for here is that this stayed together, and it really has stayed together pretty well. Not as well as it would be if it were meat, but the peppers have stayed pretty well stuffed. The rice looks like it's nicely cooked. I'm going to take right from the center here with some of the sauce. See how this tastes. A little bit of salt, and these are not a bad first attempt. We're going to eat dinner and talk about it and see if we need to do this recipe again or if we enjoy it enough to share it with you. Now, while we really enjoyed this recipe, I had the chance to make it a second time before we put this video together. What I discovered was, while I loved the flavor, the texture wasn't quite right. So instead of 1.5 cups of white rice, use 3/4 cup of white rice and 3/4 cup of barley. I'm going to suggest pearl barley because it's got the quicker cooking time. Barley adds exactly the right chew to this mixture, and you won't be disappointed. And you've got perfect vegan stuffed peppers. Thanks for joining us.